After last week's lesson, does anybody have any doubt that the book of Isaiah was written by God, was written by Isaiah, inspired by God? Any doubt whatsoever? We went over the many predictions of Isaiah concerning the nations that would come and go after Isaiah was gone. It was a little over 100 years till the first prophecy that he gave that Assyria would fall. It was over 100 years. I'll have the timeline up in just a minute once again for your review. But we spent the bulk of last Wednesday talking about just how remarkable it is that Isaiah was able to provide those predictions for us. And this evening we're going to look into the application of the prophecies, first of all, against Babylon. But before we do so, we've got our memory work, which I've divided up into 14 parts, I think. And because we have maybe 14 more lessons in this section. Yep. Just going over these nations, it's going to take us a little bit, so buckle up for that. I tried to consolidate a lot of it to where, pride was a continuing, was a common denominator between all of these nations together. So we're not going to bring up pride every time we bring up a different nation. So we're bringing one theme per nation, but our memory work here, Isaiah 14:24. Any guess as to what that first blank is? It's two blanks, actually. The Lord of hosts, hath sworn, saying, surely, as I have thought, so shall it come to pass. And as I have purposed, so shall it stand. Our Lord, that word itself speaks to his sovereignty, speaks to his existence before from eternity. He, without him, there is not anything made that was made. It speaks to his sovereignty. He is above all things, and we're going to talk about that some this evening, especially when we talk about Assyria and the lesson behind Assyria. Assyria might have thought, "I'm powerful. I'm the most powerful nation in the world." In fact, Babylon could say that at one point. And what we learn is they are not immune to God's judgment. They are amenable to God's law and his judgment. And we're going to take some application to that. So the Lord of hosts hath sworn, saying, surely as I have thought, so shall it come to pass. And as I have purposed, so shall it stand. Predictive prophecy there. So we're talking about Babylon, and we're bringing out of this prophecy concerning Babylon the idea of the fall of human pride. The fall of human pride. See, there's that timeline. If you remember that from last week, we talked about that. Around 100 years before the fall of Assyria, Isaiah prophesied it. Isaiah gave you that. Isaiah is sitting there in that point in history, and just like we today, we don't know the future. Isaiah doesn't know the future. The only way he was able to reveal these things is if one who is standing outside this timeline tells him that these things are going to occur. And so he tells him of the fall of Assyria, tells him of the rise of Babylon, who was at that point in Isaiah's day back here, just a no-name group of people, a part of a crumbling nation. Just no one would have bet on the odds of them becoming the world power at that time, but Isaiah predicts it because God provides that knowledge to him. Then he predicts the rise of the Medes and the Persians. He tells you not only is Babylon going to come after Assyria and become the world power, but these specific people, the Medes and the Persians, are going to take Babylon out. How remarkable is that? They've just a no-name nation becomes great, and then these other people who also have no name are going to come around and take Babylon out. Isaiah predicts it, and then he predicts the fall of Babylon there, which we all know took place in 536 BC, at which time the Persian Empire would come into the world and they control things from there on. So Babylon's pride. Babylon, we see the fall of human pride. There are so many things that man is just so prideful of, that he is confident in himself in ways he ought not to be confident. And Babylon is a perfect picture of that. So get to my notes here. So I wonder if someone could read for us chapter 13 and verses 1 through 11. Chapter 13, 1 through 11.
The virgin of Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amos did see. Lift ye up a banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the noble. I have commanded my sanctified ones. I have also called my mighty ones from mine anger, even them that rejoice in my highness. The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, tumultuous noise of the kingdoms or of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord, and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Howl ye, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt, and they shall be afraid. Pangs and sorrow shall take hold of them. They shall be in pain as a woman that travaileth. They shall be amazed one at another. Their faces shall be as flame. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, cruel both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. And I will punish the world for their evil, and the wicked for their iniquity, and I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible.
All right, thank you very much, brother. So judgment is coming for Babylon here. The day of the Lord is near, as he describes there. If we look at, see, where was it? In verse 5 of what we just read, even the Lord, they shall come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord, and the weapons of his indignation. Does that remind us of something Isaiah wrote before? How did he describe Assyria? The rod of mine anger, right? And so Assyria was once used as God's tool, God's method for punishing. And now he's describing those coming from different parts of the world, and they too are going to be used by God as punishment upon Babylon. And so judgment's coming, punishment is coming, and pride is a root sin that leads to a national downfall. We've seen that throughout history, how that a nation becomes haughty and prideful and overconfident in their abilities, and then somebody comes up and humbles them. And it also leads to personal downfall. Pride leads to a personal downfall as well. Let's read chapter 14 now. Chapter 14, and starting and beginning in verse 3. It shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow and from thy fear, from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve. You're speaking of Judah here, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers, he who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke. He that ruled the nations in anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and the noise of thy viols. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one in his own house. But thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with a sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Prepare slaughter for this children for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. For I will rise up against them, saith the Lord of hosts, and cut off from Babylon the name and remnant and son and nephew, saith the Lord. I will also make it a possession for the bittern and pools of water, and I will sweep it with a besom of destruction, saith the Lord of hosts. So note there in verse 12, it's an echo, a parallel with the pride of Satan being mentioned, and Babylon, his pride being likened to that of Satan's. So Babylon's king here becomes that symbol of satanic pride and rebellion. And one more passage here. If somebody could read Isaiah 21 and the first 10 verses. Isaiah chapter 21 and the first 10 verses.
The word which came unto Jeremiah from the Lord, when King Zedekiah sent upon him Pashur the son of Melchiah, and Zephaniah the son of Maaseiah, the priest, saying, Inquire, I pray pray thee, of the Lord for us. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, maketh war against us. If so be that the Lord will deal with us according to all his wondrous works, that he may go up from us. Then said Jeremiah unto them, Thus shall ye say to Zedekiah, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Behold, I will turn back the weapons of war that are in your hands, wherewith ye fight against the king of Babylon, and against the Chaldeans, which besiege you without the walls, and I will assemble them into the midst of this city. And I myself will fight against you with an outstretched hand, and with a strong arm, even in anger, and in fury, and in great wrath. And I will smite the inhabitants of this city, both man and beast. They shall die of a great pestilence. And afterward, saith the Lord, I will deliver Zedekiah, king of Judah, and his servants, and the people, and such as are left in this city from the pestilence, from the sword, and from the famine, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of their enemies, and into the hand of those that seek their life. And he shall smite them with the edge of the sword. He shall not spare them, neither have pity, nor have mercy. And unto this people thou shalt say, Thus saith the Lord, Behold.
Okay, I'm sorry. Where are you at? Okay, Isaiah. I'm like,
I didn't know.
it's like that's a strange version. I'm not seeing it. 21 verses 1 through 10, please.
The oracle concerning the wilderness of the sea. The whirlwinds in the Negev sweep on. It comes from the wilderness, from the terrible land. A stern vision is told to me. The traitor betrays and the destroyer destroys. Go up, O Elam. Lay siege, O Media. All the singing she has caused, I bring to an end. Sighing she has caused, I bring to an end. Therefore my loins are filled with anguish. Pains have seized me, like the pains of a woman in labor. I am bowed down so that I cannot hear. I am dismayed so that I cannot see. My heart staggers. Horror has appalled me. The twilight I long for has turned for me into trembling. They prepare the table. They spread the rugs. They eat. They drink. Arise, O princes. Oil the shield. For thus the Lord said to me, Go, set a watch. Let him announce what he sees. When he sees riders, horsemen in pairs, riders on donkeys, riders on camels, let him listen diligently, very diligently. Then he who saw cried out, On a watchtower I stand, O Lord, continually by day, and at my post I am stationed all nights. And behold, here come riders, horsemen in pairs, and the instant, fallen is Babylon, and all the carved images for gods he has shattered to the ground. O my precious and winnowed one, what I have heard from the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, I announce to you.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, I looked at my notes as Tom started reading, and then I looked back over, and I was like, I lost them. And then you said the Chaldeans. I was like, is that a version that says that puts the Medes for Chaldeans? But he names names, doesn't he? And when Nebuchadnezzar was thrown out there, I was like, okay, we're not right. Strangely, was on topic in a way, but he's naming names here, isn't he? He's pulled out the Medes. He's speaking of proper nouns. And when you go, say you were to go to a palm reader today, and tell me my fortune, have them read your palm. How specific are they going to get? They're going to give you your future husband's name? No, they're not going to do that. Isaiah gives you the name of the Medes. He doesn't just say they're coming from this direction or they're coming from that direction. He could have. That'd be pretty awesome in itself, because you've got Egypt down there, down in the south. making a lot of geopolitical moves in Isaiah's day, but he doesn't do that. He says the Medes. And what do we see occurring in the 500s BC? The Medes come in and dismantle the Babylonian Empire. The Medes, the Persians, basically joined. It's hard to explain. They weren't vassals to the Persians, but they were friends. We'll say that the Medes and the Persians, and of course we have Persia coming up as the dominant world power thereafter. Which, by the way, when we get to chapter 44, we're going to have another very specific name being mentioned. It's not just a nation, but the king of that nation, the king of the Persians, whose name was, who wrote the decree to return Cyrus, right? Cyrus is mentioned by name by Isaiah. So pretty amazing stuff. Babylon does not exist today. Babylon ceased to exist in 536 BC. Just as our Lord said it would happen through the pen of Isaiah. In fact, I believe that area is just completely bare. I think Saddam Hussein may have tried to bring back some of the culture of Babylon somehow. He definitely looked up to them in some way. But Babylon does not exist. Babylon ceased to exist precisely how Isaiah said it would and when Daniel said it would, right? That's another interesting topic we can go into is Daniel's prophecies concerning the nations. But Babylon, remember that poem Ozymandias that we read last week? Babylon thought they were something, and it turns out they were nothing. Babylon was a symbol of arrogance. In fact, John still uses Babylon in Revelation chapter 17 as a picture of arrogance and rebellion when he speaks of the prostitute of Babylon there in Revelation 17. In Proverbs 16:18, we read, "Pride goeth before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." So the downfall of human arrogance and exaltation is what we see in Babylon in these passages that we've just read. And pride is deceptive. Pride, when you're proud of something, that's something that looks to you like a strength. Does that make sense? If you're proud of something, you're not proud in something that's weak, are you? Pride is deceptive. It looks like strength, but it invites ruin. And so pride blinds us to our fragility, to the ability that we have to just fall, right? Fragile, the word fragile, fragility, fragile. Okay. But this is seen in the arrogance of Babylon. Their pride, in their pride, they exalted themselves above God. Just looking at 13 and verse 11, "And I will punish the world for their evil, the wicked for their iniquity, and I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and lay low the haughtiness of the terrible." So the pride of Babylon would precede their fall. Pride deceives us by, first of all, it makes one think they are reliant on themselves, like they are self-reliant, and when one feels that they are reliant on oneself, just can do everything themselves, they aren't dependent on God as they should be. Also, Babylon's wealth and their power gave them a sense of invincibility, but it fell. It still fell, as we're seeing here. How can we bring that into how can we apply that to our lives today? we have personal achievements, right? That we can allow to blind us to our need for God's grace, right? We can put the success that we have, say, in the professional world, and think that I did that, I built this, I did that. And that attitude is, first of all, ungrateful to God, but also it dilutes us in the feeling of need that we have for God, that we ought to have. If we turn to 1 John chapter 2 and verse 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever. That thing that Babylon so proud of, their power, the accomplishments that they have, they would, first of all, wouldn't have been there if it weren't for the punishment that was due to the Assyrians, right? Because they came up after the Assyrians. They were God's rod of anger against Assyria. But they thought they did that. I did that. So they forget the sovereignty of God, forget that they are amenable to God, forget that they need God. And that's a lesson 2, or application 2, is God is sovereign, and he directs the rise and the fall of kingdoms, directed the rise of Assyria, and he directed its fall. He directed the rise of Babylon, and we see that he directs its fall. Do you get the sense that God is orchestrating all this from the book of Isaiah? This isn't just, it's not just something he's not using these events. He knows they're coming. He's orchestrating these events. And so God's sovereignty ensures us that no human power can stand up against him, and not even Babylon could do that. Let's see here. Any comments or questions so far?
Brother, I think this understanding is life-changing because we all want validation. We long for validation. We want something that allows us to feel as though what we're doing has purpose, meaning, and is relevant.
Right.
And because of Calvinism, as well as just human nature developed Calvinism, systematized it essentially, we feel as though if we are being used, that is validation.
Mm-hmm.
The president currently says that he believes his life was spared so that he could do certain things, and that may be the case. But the reality, the Bible certainly doesn't tell us that, we don't know.
Right,
but
right.
Even if it is the case, here's the point. We know these things are the case. The Bible makes it clear that just because God uses you, it does not mean you're validated.
Right, absolutely.
God said of Cyrus, Isaiah 44 and verse 28, that Cyrus was his shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, he uses Babylon here, he uses Medo-Persia, he uses the Assyrians.
Yeah.
None of them were validated. Habakkuk could say in chapter 1 verse 13, hey, they're less righteous than we are, but yet they're going to destroy us. Mm-hmm. God used them.
Yep.
And so to your point about sovereignty, and you think too about Moses in Numbers 20, Moses was to speak to the rock. He hit the rock, water still came out. When we say water came out, that's validation. Not necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
And God would punish Moses. He wouldn't go out into the promised land. So then what is validation? How do we know whether or not we fit? How do we know whether or not we have meaning and purpose? Mm-hmm. And the answer is boring, if you will, but it's a blessing and absolutely just, which is read the word of God and do it. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing that, you can have validation.
Absolutely.
There's not some sign, there's not a sunset, there's not a feeling, there's not, oh, I did something at work or whatever, and that makes me feel special. Because that could be veering us off the wrong path. That could be incorrect.
Right.
So we have to constantly look at the standard that never moves, which may seem boring, but what a blessing that is. We can know that that's right.
Absolutely. You could see results of things that you do that are good results, that are to the point where people are being converted because of the work that you're doing. Is that validation? Are you still required to be obedient to God's word in all things? That doesn't excuse you from living as the Bible tells, as the Bible instructs us to live. God's use of Assyria, God's use of Babylon, God's use of Nebuchadnezzar, God's use of Cyrus did not endorse their behavior, did not validate them, as you say. Very, very good point. So God is sovereign. He directs the rise and fall of nations, as we see in Daniel, how Nebuchadnezzar would learn that the hard way. We also learn here that our trust must not be in worldly power. Babylon is a cautionary tale, not just for Babylon, but for people that relied on Babylon. And we can take that in, we can apply that many ways today. If we put our trust in a worldly power, if we put our trust in the United States of America above God, that's a mistake. If we put our trust in any leader above God, that's a mistake. Any individual. So, and putting our trust in human systems, by the way. So Babylon was mighty, but to trust in them, as we've seen in these passages, is futile. Only God is worthy of our trust. Babylon's might was temporary. It would be done away with. We have a kingdom that will not be done away with, as we read in Matthew 2:44. So Babylon's military, their cultural power just seemed unassailable, but it crumbled. And Jeremiah chapter 51. Let's go there. Jeremiah 51:37. And Babylon shall become heaps, a dwelling place for dragons, an astonishment and an hissing without an inhabitant. The only inhabitants that would be, and anybody have another word there where it says dragons? Jackals. That's right. Couldn't remember what it was. But when man moves out of an area, what moves in? Animals, right? They take over and they live there. They don't want to live there while we're there.
Well, they were there before.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You showed up and they left, and now they're coming. They came back because nobody lives there anymore. What a picture that is! Just picture your neighborhood abandoned, animals living in it. That's the picture that Isaiah gives us of Babylon. We can trust in a nation. We could also trust in worldly systems. We can put our trust in wealth. And it kind of blows my mind how we trust in the U.S. dollar. Because it's what? It's a piece of paper. It's not based on any standard anymore. It's just the government prints it and they say this is valuable, and then they print so much of it that it depreciates in its value, and we trust it, right? Well, for some reason we trust it. It's folly. We ought to put our trust in God. You know, we might trust in our employment. Feel pretty secure where we are in our jobs. My company's just been acquired twice within the span of 2 years, and both times I've seen people I work with let go. You know, and I've seen the dedication they had before. What's it doing for them now? You can't trust in things like that. You know, if I were ever pressured in putting my job before God's kingdom, I would come to a very sobering point when they were to let me go, wouldn't I? This is how much they feel. This is how much they value me. I'm not going to get let go from God's kingdom, am I? We ought to put our trust there. So we see Babylon like pride in a lot of things that we do. We see it in the world around us. We can potentially see it in ourselves. And we ought not to do that, because Babylon is the picture of the fall of human pride. It's a picture of what happens when you put your trust in the systems that man creates rather than the system that God created. And I think I'm just about it. The bell's about to ring, isn't it? Any comments or questions? Well, next week Isaiah sort of goes backwards, because Assyria came before Babylon, and he has a lot to say about the judgment towards Babylon, and then he goes into Assyria in chapter 14 and verses 24 through 27. And so we will look at that next week as a picture of God's sovereignty over empires, which is very related to what we just talked about. And so thank you all for your attention and your comments.